Alright, so I am replacing the stock horn with some of these Hella Supertones. And I was looking for places in here to mount them besides there, which that's a good mounting spot anyway, because I'll be taking that horn out. But I also noticed over here, if you can see it, where is it? Show on the camera. Right there. That is pretty much the same indentation that's on the other side, so it looks like, I don't know, maybe some of these had two horns, or they just put that there anyway. So that's exactly where I'm going to be putting those, one on one side and one on the other. Sweet. Alright, you'll have to forgive me for the odd location of this one. Basically doing a before and after test, and I wanted a little bit of distance between me and the truck, but it's also started to rain out there, and my garage is full of stuff, so I'm going to have to navigate back out there. I know these tests aren't always that great because it seems like whatever device is recording balances the sound, so you might have something that's a stock horn. And as far as the video goes, the new horns don't sound much louder. And I doubt I can figure out how to set a static level here on the iPad. But, so, I will wander out there now and honk the horn for a before. And irritate the neighbors in the process. Alright, so one thing I need to do for this is find a place to put this relay. And they say, use a self-tapping screw, but in cleaning up the engine bay, I took a whole bunch of crap out of this side. There's a fuse block I installed, another relay that's going to be going to something else. But I ended up with these nice little tapped holes you can see there and there. And so I'm just going to be putting this relay right into there, just sort of to keep that stuff over on this side of things. Just a quick comparison of the size of the horns. So there it is. Now I have to go off to the Home Depot to get some more of these little bolts that aren't in focus. Anyway, need some more of those to get the horns mounted up because I don't have any spare bolts, and the other one didn't have a bolt in it to start with, so I'm gonna go pick up some of those now. Alright, so got some bolts, gonna be bolting that stuff up. As far as wiring, I'm never any good at figuring out relays. I should learn that sometime. But I think the wiring is 2A here, but because right now there are two wires that go to the horn, to the stock horn, and one of them has power. I think like all time, like when you turn the accessory on, it has power, and then it doesn't complete the circuit until the horn button is pressed, of course. Power going all the way to the horn, so I don't know. No idea, really. I'll try 2A. If that doesn't work, then I'll go to 2B. So, we'll see. Alright, so I'm prepping up some wires for the wiring. I have a bunch of these little crimp terminals, and I'm not a huge fan of them, at least the insulation on them, because it seems like once you crimp it, the whole thing just always slides off, and I always end up having the wire pull back out of the crimp, no matter how hard I tighten it. So I usually always solder these. So I have this one that I'm getting ready to solder, and so it'll have this on one end, and then this, where it went, a little prong connector that'll go to the fuse block. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is have those, and I'll put some heat shrink tubing over the wire first, so it's on there while I solder that way. You know, the heat shrink tubing will be like here, and then once I solder up the end here, I'll just slide the heat shrink tubing up there and then shrink it down. That way it's all nice and covered. So awesome. Alright, so just showing this prepped up before I solder it. Little way I like to do it. So this end with just a little prong. You know, once it's soldered up, then I'll slide this piece over that, heat shrink it, and over here, same thing, slide this piece on here. Then what I do is I'll have like a bigger piece, and I'll slide it, after I get this one shrunk down, slide it all the way over the top of the whole thing, and yeah, so I do it something like this, and then you know, I can get it all the way to the end, and it sort of makes like a fully insulated one of these little jobbers. I like that, and gives you a little more grip when you're disconnecting them as well. So awesome. One more thing to note real quick while you're soldering on this end, you know, slide your heat shrink tubing as far away as possible, because you know, the heat will transfer down the wire and start shrinking it before you want it to shrink, and that's not good. Alright, just a quick shot of this one soldered up. Just the gunk on it is the flux, but you can see down there at the base below that it's pulled so I was just putting the solder in up at the top of it, and so it pulled it all the way down through the wires there, and it's all soldered up, so that'll be good. Alright, and here's the other end. And yeah, so I'll start putting solder on, you know, see if I can point it out here at this end, you know, at the tip there, and then I'll just keep feeding it solder there until I see, well, let me get my angle and focus, until I see that it's pulled it all the way through into these, because these would be copper down here at the base, and so once it's pulled the solder all the way through there, then that's good for me. And so there's that with some heat shrink tubing on it. See it, you know, shrinks on up, seals that up nicely, and there it is with the other layer of heat shrink on there. You can see it. You know, makes it pretty much a fully insulated one. Alright, so here I have the wires for the stock horn. What I'm going to need to do is solder some extra wire onto there so I can bring the wire back up to the relays that I have in here. Where's that relay? Here's this one. It'll be back on the firewall. Or not on the firewall, but on there, the inner fender wall. But yeah, I just like having the relays in here versus down here. I could put it down here, but I don't want to. So I'm just going to splice into these lines and extend them so they go back up into there. Alright, so I got the relay mostly hooked up except for the wire that needs to go to the horn still. Yeah, I was testing it with the voltmeter, seeing if it worked. See if I can find an angle and reach the horn here. You can hear it. See, you can hear the relay going off. I wasn't getting any voltage out of there, and so I was wondering what the hell is going on, and then I realized I have no fuses in my fuse block yet, so once I get a fuse in there, that should take care of it. Alright, so I have the wire installed for the horn, well, except for going back to the relay, but so these horns have two terminals on them, and I'm hoping that it's so you can sort of bridge them together like this, because there weren't any instructions about if one of that was ground or not. Doesn't look like it. Maybe it is. I'll take a look. But I think it's just grounded to the body through those little brackets. We'll see. Anyway, so I have the wire running down there, if you can see it, there, there, and over into the back of this horn. And then I'll take from this horn and go up into the relay. So hopefully that works. Alright, so I was wrong about the way the horn's wired, because it doesn't ground out through the body of it. You have to have two wires. I have one hooked up here just temporarily to the fuse block to test it, and the other one I briefly touched to the battery ground there, and it obviously makes a noise. So I will need to rewire those, and have some little, what are these? These type of deals that I will be hooking up to them. I guess ring terminals to properly ground those out. So then it should work, hopefully. Alright, so my ring terminals were a bit small. I wanted to use these bolts, which are the bolts that hold the horns on, and just, have them ground out through there directly instead of trying to find another ground point. So I just had like a little, countersink bit for metal. And I just opened that hole up a little more. So here we go. Alright, since I'm having to splice into the wires, I'm using these things that I got in the event that I needed to do this, though I ended up picking up the wrong package. I meant to get a multi-pack where it has a variety of them, but it looks like I got just a pack of the 4-port ones. But I'll make it work. So basically, you just have stripped wires, and you can feed them all right into the little ports here. And then I'll probably just wrap it up with electrical tape or something like that afterwards. Alright, it's getting a bit grainier because the light is low, but there you can see I've fed 3 wires in there, one coming from the positive, and then the other 2 going to each of the horns, and yeah, that's pretty much it. One of the things I like to do for those little terminals, say they accept stranded and solid wire, but it seems like whenever I try to feed a stranded wire in there, some of the wires want to just separate and then bunch up at the port, so I just solder them so it's solid again, and then shove them on in there. And I even have a free port there, which is nice because I might put additional horns on here. So there. Alright, so here we go, if we can see it. Maybe kind of, sort of. Yeah, so I have these just looped around, grounded back to the mounting point. This one on the left side, wire still. Wire along down there. Over to this one, over my little press terminal thing. All spaghetti in there. Coming up through there. Over here, over here, over here. To the relay, which connects to the fuse block. And just a brief thing on that. I just needed a point to grab power. And some people said to use the battery post terminals that have all the extra wires and stuff coming off of it, but I'm not a huge fan of those. And this one already has like 4 or 5 wires coming off of it anyway, so I just ghetto rigged this thing. Basically just drilled a hole in there, ran some wire in, and soldered it in place. I had to use my heat gun to get it warm enough to start pulling the solder in, but once it did, it took a bunch in, and it's all soldered up. Battery still charges just fine. There was some concern over whether I've contaminated the terminal and it won't charge, but charges up just fine. And then that runs over to the fuse block, which that whole fuse block pulls power off that one wire, so it just depends on if I have a fuse in there whether it goes to the terminal or not. And I have a 20 amp fuse in there right now, which might be a bit much for the horn. I don't know. I'll take a look at the package when I get inside, see if that needs changed. But I have some of the FEM freeway blasters coming in, and I think I'm going to hook those up in addition to these just to see how that sounds. So, you know, it's a 600 volt wire, so I think it should be able to handle the power to all 4 horns. But yeah, that's it. Just tested it out. It works. So I will set this back in the garage where it was before and do an after test and further annoy the neighbors.